Let's go ahead and start the meeting. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Eastman,
Here.
Commissioner Gager,
Here.
Commissioner Seibert,
Here.
Commissioner Welch,
Here.
Mayor Warren.
Here. Business is discuss the 5-lane or 3-lane options for KDOT cost-sharing funding application for reconstruction and resurfacing project on the Summit Street from Kansas Avenue to Skyline Road.
I want to start by giving the commission a little overview of how this project and cost share program even came to be. On September 3rd, the program was actually announced by KDOT because there was additional funding in the state general fund that they wanted to put towards transportation-related projects, and they're going to transfer them over to KDOT. September 4th, I think we received the official email from KDOT. So, just a little over a month ago, the program was announced. On the 6th, I reached out to Trans Systems. They're the ones that did the initial work on the 3-lane corridor study to see if there was any interest potentially. On the 13th, I did receive a draft proposal from Trans Systems. And on the 17th, at the commission meeting, we spoke about the project and talked about whether we should move forward with it, at least looking at the study and coming up with some different options. On the 20th of September, there was actually I believe it was a KDOT webinar that discussed it a little bit more and laid out some more of the specifics because it was such a new program. They were still answering questions and trying to gather information. So, that's 2 weeks ago. And then on September 27th, the Traffic Safety Committee met. We talked a little bit about it to see if they thought it was something to pursue and to visit on. October 1st, we talked about it again at the commission meeting. So that's the second commission meeting, second
Mentioned
public
it.
meeting that we talked about it to the public. And we mentioned a special meeting because we need to decide whether or not we were going to pursue even making the application, and if we're going to make an application, what options would the commission like to see? On October 3rd, we actually did receive some layouts from Trans Systems, which I'll go over here a little bit, and I didn't actually receive the cost estimates until yesterday from Trans Systems on what the 2 projects would cost. I did speak with Mr. Seibert and Jay in regards to a special meeting today just to go over those, and we talked about that last meeting October 1st as well, about calling a meeting once I had the information from Trans Systems. We received that information yesterday, and so that's why we called the meeting yesterday for today. Applications are due October 11th for this program. Don't necessarily have to submit one. You can wait until March, or you can move forward with the application. This doesn't bind the commission to receive any funds. It just basically merely is proceeding with the application process. But it's not a binding, yes, we're going to have to do this, have to do it. That comes when you actually receive the grant from the state of Kansas, if you receive the grant.
And that's when in March?
No, that'll actually be in October. The end of October, they're going to announce who receives the grant. So in November, you'll actually decide whether you want to proceed with the project or not. I want to go over a little bit more. Back in 2009, the commission looked at this project. At the time, the project that was presented to the commission did not include a sidewalk on both sides of the road. It only included a sidewalk on one side of the road. And the commission, at the time, the commissioners, and Jay, you were on the commission at that time, you decided to table it till 2010 to take a look at, because you wanted to get some thoughts and ideas on having a matching sidewalk on the east side of Summit. So you have a sidewalk on the west and the east side. And comment was made at that meeting, if we're going to do this, let's make sure we do it with sidewalks and do it the right way. But the options we have in front of you, it's very difficult overall, because that corridor is and was never designed Kansas Avenue South, it absolutely is. You know, it's 100-foot right-of-way. It was always designed and always planned by the city to be a major arterial because that was our Summit Street. No one, you know, back in the dark ages or whatever it was, ever thought that Summit Street would extend past Kansas Avenue. That's why it's offsetting. And the problem is you couldn't ever reset it back to Summit because just of all the buildings and all the infrastructure that was being put into place. And so they offset it. The right-of-way is very narrow in that corridor. We've talked about that for years, how narrow that corridor is. But going back to 2009, since it was pushed off to 2010 to do some more study, the cost estimates at that time came back just from Kansas Avenue to Radio Lane with sidewalk on both sides and the center turn lane, it was 3.5, almost 3.6 million is what it came back to. With sidewalk on just one side of the street, it was $3 million at that time. Even back then, according to our minutes from the November 3rd meeting, they stated that KDOT would be responsible for 80% of the cost and the city would be responsible for 20% of the cost, up to a maximum of 1.7 million. A maximum of 1.7 million. And there's a $3.5 million option, $3.5 million project at the time. The city would also be responsible for 100% of the construction engineering costs above the 1.7 million and 100% of the project design, right-of-way acquisition, and utility relocations. And so just doing some rough math, you know, the city's cost share would have been in the neighborhood 2.5, 2.8 million. Somewhere in that neighborhood is what the city in 2009, 2010 was looking at having to spend to participate in that project. The layout for the 5-lane, at that time, like I said, it had the sidewalk on the west side of the road and not on the east side. And I believe the way that we have it again, it actually has, in the train systems, they came up with the same thing. I think they have it on the west side and not the east side. So can you put the overview for the 5-lane? I want to point quite a few things out. Some of them back up over here. So train systems looked at this entire corridor. There's a lot of concerns. The area in red is actually where you'd have to get right-of-way acquisition on, and so you see there's right-of-way acquisition on both sides of Summit Street, just to get it wide enough for a 5-lane roadway. And that only puts a sidewalk on the west side of the road. That's it. There would not be a sidewalk on the east side. The blue is actually the construction easement. So you'd have to get a construction easement as well in order to complete that project, because they'd be on your property as they were redoing the roadway. Move it down. And so as you can see all along through there, how much right-of-way acquisition would have to take place. That'd be a very lengthy process. Could potentially take a year just to require right-of-way along that corridor. Could. Just depends on the property owners and the process and the speed of which the attorney could complete it. This shows McDonald's, but of course that's changed. So this is an old aerial, so it's something we just didn't have time to get a change. But there's already a sidewalk in that area, and there's already a crossing as well in that area. The other thing it shows is just marking from this area to the south of a 3-lane. The only reason it's shown that way is because when you do the mill and overlay, you could put back 4 lanes if you want to. You could do 3 lanes. The other thing on Summit Street, if you go farther down, you'll actually see we added sidewalk, because there's sidewalk along here already. And then, so where the sidewalk ends, would be next sheet, I guess. We actually add the sidewalk along on the east side of the road there. Is what Trans Systems recommend. The reason for that is there's some grading issues on this side of the road, and it would definitely increase the cost substantially. Last time this portion of road was actually milled and overlaid from Radio Lane to Skyline was in 2000 was was the last time it's been milled and overlaid. Spoke and tried to get information and was looking on Laserfish trying to determine when the section from Kansas Avenue to Radio Lane was last milled and overlaid. And the only records I could find is that in 1995, 96 time period, they were talking about a section of Kansas, or a section of Summit that was in pretty good shape that they would just crack seal in order to improve the longevity. And then I reached out to Kurt to see if he remembered when it was done. And he remembers the turnback period, but that wasn't part of the turnback during that time. There were some other projects that were part of the turnback. So he thinks it was in the 90s at some point. He just doesn't remember what year. And so it could have been as long ago as 1990 is the last time that road's been milled and overlaid, which is quite a while. Going to the 3-lane option. The 3-lane option, actually very little right-of-way acquisition has to take place. There is some here because they look at redoing this curve so it's not as strong as a curve in that area. So there is some roadway, right-of-way acquisition through here. This is a construction easement along here, but there is no road right-of-way to be acquired. Yeah, probably next sheet. And at the very end, by McDonald's, there is a little bit of area potentially for some easement, but I think they were thinking about this sidewalk is wide, so it's something we'd have to visit with Train Systems if we did ever get to the final design portion or award of the grant. We'd have to talk about how this would be laid out. Also, there's existing sidewalk in this area, so it's and the drive. There's some concern with the angle of the approach on that drive, and so they may have to redo that drive there. There's a couple problems with this. The biggest problem is it actually reduces the width of the roadway, and so it actually reduces it by 11 feet, the total roadway. But what it does do is it does provide sidewalks on both sides, on the east side and the west side of the road, without trying to get a large amount of right-of-way acquisition from the private property owners. So, wanted to kind of touch on the 4-lane conversion to 3-lane conversion. State of Iowa has done lots of these projects, and they actually designed a video to try to explain to people the difference of 4-lane to 3-lane. And there's also a lot of information in your packet about traffic volumes, about a lot of communities that have done it in California, wherever, from roadway sizes of 8,000 vehicles a day to 25,000+ vehicles per day that have went from the 4 to the 3-lane conversion and have had good success. But I wanted to really just show the commission this video that was done by the Iowa Department of Transportation, just to try to alleviate some of the questions and concerns people have, and give you a better understanding of what a 4-lane to a 3-lane conversion actually means.
Can I have one good scoop of chocolate, please?
Hey Avery, what's a 4-lane to 3-lane conversion?
Can everybody hear that?
What do you think about the project to change this road
Thank you.
from 4 lanes to 3 lanes?
They say it's gonna be safer. I guess we'll just have to wait and see about that.
Let's take a quick look at what a 4 to 3-lane conversion is. Here you see a typical 4-lane road. When we convert to a 3-lane, we keep the road the same size, but restripe it with 1 lane in each direction and a turn lane down the center. This often leaves room left over, which can be used for enhancements, such as parking or bike lanes. There are many benefits to this new configuration, which we'll discuss a bit later. But first, let's talk about safety. Improved safety for all users is the main reason cities across Iowa have chosen a 3-lane road. In this case, 3 is better than 4 because it results in fewer crashes and fewer injuries. This keeps traffic flowing, saving people time and money. In fact, converting a 4-lane road to a 3-lane road has been shown to reduce crashes by up to 47%.
Let's see, groceries, pharmacy, what else? Whoa, what are you doing?
With 4-lane roads, drivers may stop or slow down at any time to make a turn from the left lane. These unexpected actions result in frequent rear-end crashes, side swipes, or quick lane changes.
Hey, are you okay?
Another common crash type on 4-lane roads is an angle crash. Due to line-of-sight issues on 4-lane roads, drivers trying to make that left-hand turn often cannot see vehicles in the outside lane because they are hidden by vehicles in the inside. By design, a 3-lane road makes these previously invisible cars visible, helping drivers navigate their turns more safely. Moving all left turns to the center lane reduces rear end and side swipe crashes too. Fewer crashes also means that law enforcement will spend less of their time responding to crashes, allowing them to focus on other priorities.
The main reason we went to a 3-lane versus a 4-lane is for safety. We were covering a lot of accidents on the 4-lane, and by going to a 3-lane, it has decreased our accidents significantly. Also, it's a safety factor for our pedestrians.
It's true. Research has shown that 3-lane roads are safer for pedestrians than 4-lane roads. There are fewer lanes to cross, so pedestrians are exposed to traffic for a shorter time. And since there is only one lane of traffic in each direction, it's easier for pedestrians to judge how traffic is moving. Converting to a 3-lane road can improve safety for all users. But how well does it work for large vehicles, like farm equipment and semi-trucks? And how does it affect traffic flow?
During harvest time, we see quite a bit of equipment coming through here, like planters, combines, things like that. The traffic still flows great with it.
Since the width of the pavement hasn't changed, the impacts on large farm equipment and the vehicles around them are minimal.
As you can see, our equipment is big and getting larger, and we appreciate it when people get out of the way. We're harvesting corn right now, and we're having a pretty good year.
A 3-lane road also works well for semi-trucks. The center turn lane provides them with the room, if needed, to make turns onto or off of the road.
No issues at all with me with the semi-truck, just with the 2-lane with the lane in the center.
A 3-lane road also works well for emergency responders because drivers can move over quickly and easily.
Compared to either a 2-lane road or a 4-lane road, the 3-lane has a lot better response time because we can get across there a lot quicker.
On a 4-lane road, emergency vehicles can sometimes face bottlenecks when drivers in the left lane try to move over but can't. This problem goes away on a 3-lane road.
The 3-lane highway here in Atlantic works really good for us because the center lane is usually open for us, so we see very little slow time going through town.
The flexibility of a 3-lane road improves emergency response, and for drivers, traffic flows more consistently at appropriate speeds, making their drive times more predictable.
To whom it may concern, I have lived in Cresco, Iowa all my life. I want to commend your changing the highway number 9 from a 4-lane to a 3-lane. It has slowed traffic down, it keeps the trucks in line at a proper speed, reduces accidents. It was an excellent change in every detail.
Highway 9 stays very busy. We've seen our businesses grow. Come and check us out in Cresco. If you want to see it firsthand, love to have you visit. Just drive through the corridor. You'll see that access to our businesses is very easy and identifiable. The road hasn't changed, just the paint changed. And so we figured out that the traveling public understood pretty quickly on how to maneuver this new corridor. And we also figured out that getting access into our downtown was actually easier and safer.
For many Iowa cities, 3 is better than 4. Check it out. Find out if a 3-lane road is right for your city. Visit the following website for more information.
I think that's probably why Trans Systems actually suggested it, is for the pedestrian aspect of it, but also the safety perspective in that corridor. Because there are a tremendous amount of right-of-way issues that would have to be overcome in order to go to a 5-lane road. And that was some of the same concerns, the cost concerns even back then, is not having sidewalks and the safety aspect of that roadway along Summit Street. They talked about reducing or keeping the lane width the same. Unfortunately for us, we don't have the right-of-way to keep it the same. You would have to reduce it down in order to put sidewalks on both sides. So that's a detrimental point if you were to go after the 3-lane suggestion over the 5-lane suggestion. In your packet, and I was going to go over these anyway, regardless, there are 2 cost estimates and the application form for the KDOT cost share program. The project cost estimates for the...
What page are you on next, please?
Page 6. Would be, it looks like this. $6.3 million, over $6.3 million. If we were to try to keep it at a 50-50 type, where the state ends up paying 50% out of pocket and the city ends up paying 50% out of pocket, it'd be about $3.2 million project. The only portion of this project that KDOT will actually support is the construction portion. The local is responsible for all the other costs, and that's why it comes to, on the construction portion, it's not a 50-50 construction cost breakdown. It's actually more on KDOT than it is on the city because of the design costs, the right-of-way acquisition, utility adjustments, and the engineering inspection. And so, at the end of the day, the city in that option would be about $3.2 million, and I believe it's like a 28% is what our portion would be of the construction. Minimum's 25%, I believe, for this program. The other option is the 3-lane roadway with sidewalk on both sides. That cost estimate is $5.2 million, so about $1.1 million less. But our portion of funding would not, it would actually decrease about $600,000 over the 5-lane. So our portion would be $2.6 million, and that's more of a 65-35 match is what it'd be. So 35% of the construction cost would be city, and 65 would be the state on that program if you were to go that route. Other option is just do mill and overlay, simple mill and overlay, which will get you, but it's not an option for this program. It'd have to be done by the city wholly. Would be to mill and overlay, no sidewalks, no curb and gutter repair, no new storm water in that area, no new water lines, because this is going to include storm water, water lines, walking paths, so on and so forth. But it'd be about $1 million from Kansas Avenue to Radio Lane, just rough cost according to Chris Mine at Smith and Oaks. He did some rough calculations. So it'd be $1 million just for a mill and overlay, which will get us by 15 years probably. But the project for 5 lanes, it pretty much handled everything for the city, and it's a concrete roadway from Kansas Avenue to Radio Lane. It'll handle probably about 30-35 years, even if you were to increase traffic flow substantially with very minimal, just crack sealing, very minimal maintenance. Or you can go the 3-lane design, which will still get you the 30-year roughly for that section from Kansas to Radio Lane. From Radio Lane to Skyline, it is only a mill and overlays because we don't have as much concerns with that portion of roadway for the as far as base goes. Plus we got sidewalks. It's a Today really is just a discussion. I'm here to answer any questions the commission may have. Application is due October 11th, or we can postpone it till March application process. We can do 5-lane, 3-lane, nothing. It's up to you. This is your decision, and I have no recommendations. It's all on you. And that's really why I want to see what the commissioners want, because this is a commission decision. This is not a city manager, city staff decision.
Well, I might start out in 2009 and 10, we were looking at that at the time, and I think the reason why we dropped it because we wanted to see sidewalks on both sides and to do it right, and then we just didn't get it done at the time. Being a cost share, I mean, it's tempting, to look at this program. I think a 5-lane is probably out of the picture because it's going to be too costly to get easements and stuff like that, and you're going to make some people, kind of mad. But on a 3-lane, I think where we stay within our corridor, a range of, both sides, I think on as far as the traffic and stuff, I think we'll have less fatalities and the traffic will probably move better. But if you're going to do it right, to me, I'd like to see sidewalks on both sides, because since Creekstone is expanding and stuff, there's a lot of people doing a lot of walking back and forth on those sidewalks and stuff. So I'm just talking out loud right now. I'm just throwing it out there.
There's 2 items in here, 2 handouts. There's one by AARP and there's another one actually by the Federal Highway Administration. It talks about the myths and debunking the myths on these 4 to 3-lane conversions. It says a myth, the road may divert traffic from the area affecting economic growth. They say this is false. If you remove a travel lane, then traffic will back up. This is false. And they have multiple studies that show that it's false. Road diets are too narrow for large vehicles. This is false. It does talk about having that excess availability on both sides, but unfortunately, if we were going to have sidewalks, that roadway is going to narrow it. It would have to in order to get sidewalks on both sides in order to stay in corridor. So there would still be some concerns for large vehicles, but if with the narrow roadways, everything that you read, everything you see, the narrower the roadway, the slower the traffic goes, because it's a psychological thing.
Let me ask you this question: if you put the sidewalk on the the west side, going through there, and not do one on the east side, would it still be? You wouldn't have to narrow the road.
No, you wouldn't. No, you would not have to narrow it. Because for a total reconstruction project, you're still going to total reconstruct it. So you can shift that road on any side you want and put a sidewalk on one side or not on the other. So you can shift it and expand the width of the roadway if you would like to do that. That's an option. We did not look at that option. We're just trying to get some numbers put together, but I think it would fall within those estimates very easily.
So you're saying that we could look at this in March, right? Nick?
There is a funding, there potentially is funding available in March. They know there's funding available now.
Okay.
There may not be funding available in March. It just depends. And if you're not necessarily selected in October, you may be selected in March. Just depends on how they feel about it. But there is one in March as well.
Well, with the election coming up, I'm kind of interested to see what Mr. Rogers and Mr. Pierman think of this.
I'd love to tell you guys, at least from my opinion, is give you some information that I found along the way too. If you'd entertain me for a few minutes.
Mr. Rogers, are you interested in an opinion?
Okay, so I'm a little bit underprepared. I actually meant to put together a slideshow, but I've been at the hospital until about 4 a.m. this morning. I have about 3 hours of sleep under my belt, and I'm going to give it a go. So we've heard a lot of supporting evidence for a 3-lane conversion. I want to give you a little bit of backstory about what 3-lane conversions, where they come from. This is something called a zero vision, or vision zero, I guess. It originates in Europe, and it's a cultural city and urban planning development movement that caters to bicyclists and pedestrians over street and automobile traffic. So this has swept through parts of Europe, and it's now become all the craze for city and urban planning and development in America. Unfortunately, all too often it's implemented incorrectly in the wrong places and for all the wrong reasons, other than just to say, look what we did. We're hip, savvy, we spent a bunch of money we didn't need to, but we're with the times. And it sure looks good on paper, you know. So let me tell you a few things about, we've already established that a 5-lane expansion is probably not a good idea and out of the question given the situation. So there's only 2 control points for traffic on the corridor, which we're aware of, Summit and Radio Lane. The average wait time for a vehicle is 20 seconds, but you would never see anybody wait more than 10 minutes ever. So I don't really see traffic as a consideration here. It's a selling point, but it's not true. It's nothing but spin, and it's something you guys should cut out of your thought process altogether when you consider this project. We don't have a traffic problem in our Kansas City whatsoever. There's 60 total accidents according to the report that Nick is citing. Okay, and that's from January 1st, 2014 to April 30th, 2017. None of these that I'm aware of from any evidence I could find were fatalities. They were fender benders. Okay, that's an average of 18 accidents per year. 18 accidents per year on the corridor. That's it. 18. If we were to make an improvement of all 18 accidents, meaning what is our value cost return for this project if we're citing traffic and accidents as the primary reason, and our goal is to reduce those by any percentage point. If we were to reduce those 100%, that would put the percentage points at about $333,000 per accident. So for every accident we reduce, if we reduce 18 in a year, it costs us $333,000 to do that. Okay, but that's not the case because nobody's ever reduced accidents by 100%. The most anybody's ever seen a conversion like this do is 47%, like his video showed. So if you take that math, you can just roughly double it, and you figure you're looking at over $500,000 to prevent a fender bender that insurance takes care of, and we're talking about tax dollars. I don't see the need for a project. It reminds me of an impulse buy. You go to the store to get a gallon of milk. You end out in the checkout lane, and they weave you through a bunch of stuff and crud that you didn't need, or maybe they mark down that blanket set $20 that you were wanting last. You don't need it, but if somebody sells it to you good enough, you'll take it. And I'm telling you right now, you're being sold. You're being sold to, and I implore you as a citizen not to buy this for $6 million, $3 million, for $2 million, because the benefit isn't there. Traffic studies have shown that an optimal implementation with the 2-way and left turn lane with 3 lanes will only improve things a maximum of 20 to 30%. I mean, that's really realistically what we're looking at.
And is that accidents?
For accidents. So we're.
Do you have those traffic studies on here? Can you give me copies of them?
I can. Yeah, I can. I absolutely will, because I'm using the same studies that the proponents of these types of plans are using. And see, that's the thing. It's a one-sided issue. Now, I'm not saying that this is a one-sided issue, but all the studies that have been done typically are very one-sided.
Even from the Federal Highway Administration?
Well, even when you're looking at special interest groups who lobby and take money to do things, absolutely. Anybody that receives funds to do a job, you have to consider where their motives are. So I would say anybody. But your responsibility is to us, not to Nick, not to the highway, or to these studies. So I would implore you, I'll give you the studies, but I would say you just use common sense. Use common sense. The $1 million that we would spend on the project, I just don't see the benefit. And the trans system study seems to suggest that we should use a 5-lane implementation over a 3. So I find it in bad faith almost that somebody would come out, charge us for a study, make a best practices recommendation for 5-lane implementation because of the configuration of our corridor. I mean, if for no other reason than the spacing of our drives. We have way more drives per mile than is recommended for an optimal implementation for a 3-lane configuration. Plus, you look at the depth of our parking lots for our businesses that you have right-hand turns into, you have traffic, you're gonna have traffic lined up. And it's interesting that he's citing these state pages to sell this to you guys, and it's a myth, we're myth busting. But one of those things said, this, fact, it does not slow down traffic. But then you start reading the paragraph and it says, usually doesn't, almost never. But that means it does. It's not a fact. Statistically, when implemented correctly, things do work okay. But we're not a prime case study for an implementation of a 3-lane roadway in the Summit Corridor. It's not the implementation that you're seeing in the studies. It's one thing being sold as something else, is what it is. And if for no other reason alone than the fact that they recommended we shouldn't do a 3-lane because of the number of drives in a given 1 mile stretch, I would say that I would beg you guys to knock this down. Just table it. At least wait till after the election. Let somebody else make the decision. Let the voters hear about. Let the citizens make a case. This is being punched through at the last minute, and I would hate to see anybody make a bad decision that will affect the city for years to come, and the commerce and safety. We really don't know that this is going to increase anything at all. We know how many we do have. We have 15 to 18 a year, and nobody's hardly getting hurt. And it's not costing the taxpayers any money. You do this, it's going to cost us $2 to $6 million, or whatever we do. I'm sure we'll find lots of hidden expenses and developers and contractors who screw things up like they did with the development, up by Creekstone, which we'll probably have to foot the bill for. And I just don't see any assessments of like the taxes. It's not worth it. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for hearing me.
Scott, do you want to say anything about it?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm sure this is a fun afternoon. Anyways, I basically just came to hear things out. I haven't really made much of a decision either way, and I don't expect you guys to take what I say or what anyone says to have to make a decision today, or if you want to put it off to March. I completely understand where you guys are coming from on that. These are just my initial thoughts. Seeing the presentation, hearing about going to 3-lane or 5-lane over the last 2 or 3 months, and I really haven't focused in on just this topic. There's so many entities within the city to really study and look at. I do look at a few things on here. One is, we didn't go to 5 lanes last time because we didn't have sidewalks on both sides of the street. And I would almost contend now the number of people that like to bike to work or walk to work or who are using Summit Street have increased. I've noticed that I have employees that like to bike to work. They have to find alternate routes sometimes. I know there's a lot of people who just like to get exercise to do their shopping. And if you have sidewalks on both sides, actually places for people to walk or jog or bike, it makes it easier for them to stay off of our streets. So yes, we may only decrease traffic accidents a little here, and we may only do certain things to keep the side swiping from happening, but I do see it as a benefit not only for so much of the traffic, but for the citizens who do walk that area. There are a ton of people who walk up and down that area of Summit, or who like to bike to work, who like to do those things. So eventually, Summit Street's gonna have to be addressed one day. We could have done it in 2009, we possibly could have done it a couple years ago. Eventually, Summit Street's gonna have to be looked at, approached, and a decision's gonna have to be made on Summit Street. So then we have to decide, how are we gonna do it? And I do agree, if you could get sidewalks on both sides, I think it would be very beneficial. It's amazing how many people I see biking now, not just out in the neighborhoods, but uptown, who like to bike. And I've had issues uptown biking because they don't feel like they have a place to bike because they're in the streets, they're in the way of the cars. And if you're gonna bike, stay off the streets are for cars. You hear all those complaints. And when you talk about it, we talk about increasing the quality of life of our community, increasing the quality of life of our citizens, giving them somewhere to exercise, giving them somewhere to bike, so they don't have to use the car. Keep the cars off the streets, you decrease some of that traffic too. So, and those are just my kind of initial thoughts to myself, but again, right now it's up to you guys. So, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, go ahead. First of all, I'd like to thank both candidates. Some information
is valuable in trying to make a decision. The decision I have to make today, I cannot make in favor or against, simply because I haven't been apprised of enough information. I got handed a 25-page, actually 50, because it's both sides of information that I can't digest here in 5 minutes. My personal feelings through the last 10 years, and as a property owner in this area, the 5-lane is a ridiculous plan, procedure in Arc City, simply because of the costs and the damage it'll do to the existing properties in Arc City that are creating. Nick, what was it, 49% of the income from sales tax comes from that corridor? 48%, I'm sorry, I'm wrong again. 48%, somewhere in that range. Irregardless, I don't want to hurt anybody in that area. When I was looking at the pictures, I saw half of the rent funeral home parking lot being done away with. That bothers me. I wouldn't want to take anybody's major parking lot like that. And I don't remember if it was the 3-lane or the 5-lane.
That'd be the 5-lane, I believe.
I believe it's the 3, but go ahead.
3-lane would be the portion of the laundry parking lot there.
The laundry, up to the laundry. The line I saw was going to the laundry from Kansas. That line drew right across his parking spaces. I saw that. I don't know if it's 3 or 5. Doesn't matter.
Well, that's where our right-of-way line is already, is that's the line you see.
Okay.
The area in red is actually where.
The second thing that I'd like to bring up, and I used to have to go to Sioux City about every 3 months. That's an 8-hour drive, so when I get there, I'm tired. I was in many of those 3 lanes. I will tell you where I believe 3-lane roads work the best, and Travis hit on it slightly, is in an uptown area like Arc City's. 3-lane works very well in a commercial area where there's not a lot of turn-ins and turn-outs. One of our biggest problems in this corridor we keep talking about is there's a pull-in or a pull-out every 75 to 100 feet all along this highway. Every bit of those, that's where those accidents happen. Somebody's pulling into the Sonic, somebody's pulling out of Casey's, somebody's pulling into the bank, every one of those turn in and outs is a bigger problem than anything else we have. I remember, and Jay, I don't think it was 6 months ago or a year, that you suggested that we de-stripe that area and paint it 3-lane and try it. And I applaud that. The only thing I disagree with what's been proposed to us on a 3-lane is doing away with 11 feet of highway. If you saw in those pictures, that could be, and I happened to get to go to Europe about 3 years ago, and they have bike trails right along the highway. They're a painted stripe. I promise you, I stepped out on one of those areas one time and almost got run over by a bicyclist that could run faster than Ken. Those areas for bikes are tremendous in European countries. I don't know if they work in Arc City. I'm not used to them here. Nobody else would be. But to leave the road size the same and put a 3-lane in, I'd like to see us try. It might cost us $50,000 to stripe it. That's 2 days' interest on $6 million. I can't sit here today and vote for doing anything simply because of the shortness of time, the size and scope of the project. I don't care that somebody else is paying $3 million because that somebody else is still me. I've got 2 pockets in these pants. The government pocket's on one side, my pocket's on the other. My pocket gets empty every time you dig out of the government pocket, whichever government that is. So the benefit to Arc City of improving that corridor is very necessary. I suggested in a work session about a month ago when I first got on this bench that we lower the speed limit from Kansas Avenue to Radio Lane to 20 mile an hour. The amount of traffic we have in that corridor is 16, Chief, I think. Didn't I see him walk in?
Jimmy's here.
Huh?
Almost 17,000.
17,000 cars a day goes up that narrow lane. 6,000 go from Chestnut to Madison. 3 times the traffic we're trying to get through there, we're running them 30 mile an hour. It's no wonder we have rear-end collisions. I'd like to see that lowered to 20. I suggested we lower Radio Lane to a school zone from Summit Street to 15th Street during the hours of 7:30 to 8:30 and from 3:30 to 4:30. Both of those suggestions cost us nil. You got 6 or 8 signs to put up, some police enforcement, which I take my hats off to the police department in this town. They do a great job. I call them dummy cars, and I don't mean to offend anybody by that, but I love them parking a car there. There's nothing that improves my driving any quicker than seeing a police car in my rearview mirror. or seeing that dummy car right along the curb thinking, oop, I better get this seatbelt on, or I better slow down, or I better do whatever. It can be done very quickly. Coupled with Jay's earlier idea, if we really want to try a 3, let's try a 3. Jay, I thought it was an excellent idea. It doesn't cost much to do it. We've got another 3 or 4 months to maybe apply for something if we decide that works. And we leave the street the right width. The final problem I have with this whole proposal is once you spend the $6 million, if it's wrong, we got to go back and tear up 11 foot of street, try to put it back to a 4 lane or an extended 3 or whatever. And I agree with Travis that these kind of things come up. We've had 10 days to really talk about it this time around, and that's too quick for me to make a $6 million decision.
Well, have we considered no left turn signs? Just to put no left turn signs in that corridor from whatever times we want to implement?
Be an enforcement issue.
We haven't done that or proposed it, no.
Yeah, but I'm wondering if the problem is you get rear-ended because you're stopped to turn, don't turn left. It's a,
No left turns anywhere in that corridor?
well, you set your times that you want to try it. I mean, you're just trying to reduce the number of accidents. I've counted about, when this first came up the other day and we were talking about pedestrians, I counted down Summit. I drove from Kansas to Radio Lane back and forth multiple times, first thing in the morning, and we had about 18 kids trying to cross to get to Radio Lane to go down towards school. And once that ended, we had 5 people that were on the street between Kansas and Radio Lane walking. So I think the sidewalks are a good idea. I think it's important to have them. And we've talked about sidewalks many times.
Do you think we need them on both sides of the street? I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I looked the other day after I heard what we were going to do the other day, being yesterday. Between the sidewalks that we put in and the parking lots in front of those businesses, on the east side of the road, there's only about 150 feet of grass that needs to be paved or sidewalk put in. I went by the fire department yesterday, and they're putting in 300 and some feet of sidewalk. I don't know what the expense of that is. Do you know, or is that a city project or what?
Tony? It's a city project, it's just.
It'll be close to about 10,000.
So for 10,000, we put in 300 feet at the fire department, and we're talking $500,000 to put sidewalks on both sides of Summit Street for 5 blocks. That doesn't make sense to me. The amount of dollars, nothing else. I understand enlarging or getting property, and that's one of my biggest problems, is you're gonna start a condemnation procedure that you never know where the top line's gonna be on that figure, because courts are allowed to award ridiculous prices to landowners for loss of business, loss of cost of moving, cost of doing whatever. So I don't know. I think the sidewalk is a great idea, and I agree with everything that's been said about people walking and bicycling, but I think most of it's in that area that we're talking about, Radio Lane to Kansas. When I went past Radio Lane, only on the west side, and the west side clear up to the steakhouse, I believe it is, and that's where Nick's talking about, and I see it. You get into a steep grade that wouldn't be a good, easy area to put sidewalks, especially for bicycles. But we also have a crossover right there that could cross over to the other side and continue a sidewalk on out. I don't know that we need matching sidewalks. That kind of,
All right, Nick,
I think we need the expense.
yeah,
Go ahead.
Nick, are we gonna allow them to bike on the sidewalks once they get out of the downtown area?
Bike on sidewalks now, if they're not in downtown, isn't that the way the rule states?
Is that the-
I'm sorry?
They're supposed to be on the roadway and follow the traffic laws.
So no bicycles on the sidewalks at all?
Anywhere?
Anywhere? Is that what you're saying?
Uptown.
Well, okay.
We've got marked uptown, but if they're in the road, they have to follow the traffic laws of
Right.
the vehicle.
But if we put a sidewalk from Kansas to Radio Lane, can they ride bikes on it?
I believe so, yes.
That's
Well, if they,
There's nothing that says they can't now.
yeah, so if they're doing that, do you need a bicycle lane if they can ride on the sidewalks? I mean, I'd like to see us try signage that says no left turn for during these hours and set whatever parameters we want to before getting into a multi-million-dollar project that I just haven't had time to research. It has been brought up quickly during meetings with not a lot of real discussion as far as I'm concerned. And I just got this packet at a couple minutes till noon as well and haven't had a chance to really absorb it. I mean, I'd be for
That's the biggest problem
cabling
I
the
have is-
issue.
is-
Well, I think what we ought to do is try that 3-lane. We can stripe that 3-lane and try it for a temporary period of time and just see if it works.
On our own dime, without applying for the
Yeah.
grant.
I would make a motion that we have city staff study cost expense of A, lowering the speed limit to 20 mile an hour, and B, striping it for a 3-lane. And C, look at, and we have a safety group that's supposed to be looking at these issues. When do they meet, Nick? The 11th of this? And I know that's after next. And this is Nick's, and somebody said something in your talk, and I want to correct that a little bit. Nick made it very clear to start with. He was neither recommending to us nor whatever, so.
And I think I want to clarify too, our position is when grant opportunities come available, we get the information as quickly as we can. For the commissioners, unfortunately, the information that we had was not received until yesterday. We've been working with Trans Systems to get us information, all along. Everyone's seen the Trans Systems study probably 6 months, 8 months, if not longer. It's been out there and available on our website. Been meeting at different meetings, Traffic Safety Committee. This project has been on the books since 2017 in our CIP, so it's been brought up every year. It's our highest rated project that gets voted on by our CIP committee every year, and so it's not like this is a let's surprise, you know. This is something that we've been looking at. The funding opportunity finally came available. Finally, it's not my fault that it's a 1 month short deal. I'm trying to get you the information so you don't miss the window. If you want to miss the window, that's 100% on the commission. But if we weren't to bring it to the commission, then that would have been on staff.
Yeah.
To at least not bring to the attention of the commission for that opportunity.
I believe I was in the middle of trying to make a motion. I absolutely appreciate what Nick is saying, is absolutely true. City staff, manager included especially, has done a great job of getting us something very quickly, which is just too quick for me to act. So my motion is going to, go back to it a second if you would. My motion will be that we turn to city staff, including the safety committee on the 11th, to make a recommendation back to our board Tuesday, we meet?
That's not enough time, sir.
Yeah,
Okay.
it'll be November.
Give them 2 weeks?
Yeah, it'd have to be the November meeting.
Okay. What would that meeting be, so I can finish my motion?
November 5th.
City staff and safety committee make a recommendation back to the commission by November 5th on the issues of 3-lane painting, striping, out of our own pocket, on the issue of 20 mile an hour speed limit from Kansas Avenue to Radio Lane, and a school speed limit from 15th to Kansas Avenue during the hours of, is it 7:30 to 8:30 and 3 to 4? Is that the normal school
I think
traffic?
it's 2:30 to 3:30 is the one they have for the
Okay.
no left turn.
Matching the
on high
schools,
school, whatever.
matching the schools, but I want that whole quarter. We've got the worst, no, I'm not gonna say that. My wife's worst driver than my kids are. We've got the youngest, least experienced drivers getting out of school, making a race for McDonald's, making whatever they're doing, cutting through the shopping center, Ace parking lot, doing things like this that they just haven't learned how dangerous that is. I want to slow them down. We learned one thing back in the 80s when they slowed speeds down from 70 to 55. It saved lives and stopped damage. And I think we can do the same thing right here in town. Thirdly, I want to study the proposal of no left turns in at least special areas of that same corridor. That's my motion. If you condense it some, it'd help everybody.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and second. Is there any discussion on it?
Yes, there is. I like all your comments. First of all, let's decide if we want to approach to get a grant. It's not that we're going to do it right now. We have 2 or 3 months anyway to decide if we want to do this, and if we don't decide to do this, we can do the other part. On your motion to lower the speed limit on Radio Lane from Summit to 15th Street, I think that'd be something uncalled for. The schools, the kids walk along there, and we may need to put sidewalk there along some of the places. That may be something else we do. But right now, I don't think it's a good idea to put 20 mile an hour for 15 blocks at the school, because I think you'll get a lot of people upset because they're not going to realize it's 20 unless you put flashing lights down the whole roadway, so they'll realize that. And so if we okay that, I think that's the only way you're going to slow traffic down. Other than the signs aren't going to make any difference because they don't pay attention to them now. So I think that's okay. We can have the city staff do that, but I think we ought to look at the speed limit a little different than what the whole roadway.
I also agree with you that our kids do cut across Ace parking lot. I also like to commend the police department for seeing police cars there, stopping them, and I seen them getting tickets. Also, Jim, I have been in law enforcement a long time. I can tell you, you can stick up signs all over the place unless you have a officer there to enforce it. It's just a sign, because people are going to do what they want to do. And I just don't think signs are the answer. It just, right now, there is a 20-mile speed zone through the high school that I am happy to state. I do see cars lowering to 20 miles an hour. However, there's a sign that exits the high school that says 230 to 330, and I have yet to see one that's been stopped or enforced. They all turn left. It's like mockery. Everyone turns left, except me. And signs aren't the answer to this. We are going to need sidewalks on the west side. I can see where the city manager stated, you know, the east side, there's so many, as Travis pointed out, there's so many driveways into things that that might be something we need to rethink. But at this point, I just don't see that sidewalks are necessary on the east side. West side, I can see people walking all the time. I'm with Canyon, I drive up and down the street all the time. I count how many people are on the sidewalks. And I really think that there's a lot of elderly that use those sidewalks. At this time, I just don't think there's anything the traffic committee is going to say that was different from our last traffic meeting. I'm on that committee, and that was our recommendation to go ahead and send it to the commission. So.
Said what commission?
The information regarding trans systems.
Okay.
Okay. So, go ahead.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
I had a question, if I may. Ken Harriger, as most of you know me. Karen is right on traffic signs no left. Because I have traffic no left turn signs right in front of my house, and they avoid it and go against it every day. And this commission and the city attorney at the time, we can't enforce that. Unless you allow the police department to be there and write tickets, you're not going to change that. I do like the idea of Canyon no left turn. I think that'd be great, but you're going to have a stinger if you're going to make it work. I would love to see the stinger in my area to help us where we're at. There's a lady, probably our age, Karen, come out there yesterday afternoon when I got home from her trip. She she pulled up there, she looked, and when it started out left, and I waved at her and pointed at that sign, that's the expression she gave me. So, I am for what you're saying, the motion before you now. I do agree that a trial striping, and let's see if that'll work. I'm all for that. But I'm also for no left turn, but let's have a stinger and make it work if you're gonna do that. I've said all I'll say for right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
Okay, we got a motion on the floor and a second. Any other discussion on it? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose?
Aye.
Motion carries.
I'm ready to make a motion that we authorize the city manager and staff to go ahead and make an application to Kansas Department of Transportation to make that, and after we find out what that is, then we can go from there.
I second.
For what option on?
Oh, three-lane option, I'm sorry.
Okay, it's been moved and second. Anybody got any questions on it? I've got one. Do we have, if we put this thing in, turn this thing in, and we got till, say we get it, how soon do you have to, when you get notified, how soon do you have to act on that, Nick, on that?
I cannot tell you. I don't know the specific date. As far as moving forward and proceeding,
Mhm.
I think you pretty much get the green light from the get-go to move forward and begin your planning process and engage an engineer and move forward. As soon as you receive the award letter.
Well, what my question is, will we have time to strike that three-lane to be able to see how it works before we really spend that money going forward on that?
Not for the application, no.
But we'd have time after it's sent in to...
after that.
Right, but the problem is you're applying basically to make it a three-lane road. You're not applying to, you know, try a three-lane and then reconstruct something different. You're applying for one thing. So if you apply for it, it wouldn't make sense to stripe it down and see what the results are. Best thing is if the commission wants to move forward with striping of three lanes, you stripe it three lanes, let it sit for however long, see how the public does with it, and then go back. And if funding becomes available, try again. If, we just don't know. You know, it's been a little bit more history. You know, the project was done with a comprehensive traffic plan from the state of Kansas, which was a 5-year plan. And Arc City was known at that time to quickly turn projects, KDOT projects, and get them completed. That's why they, in 2008, went ahead and gave the project, at least that's what was stated in the minutes by Steve Archer, is that's why they looked at the Summit Street project. And so in 2008, it was an 80-20 project. The funding mechanism changed in 2010. And so in 2010, when they started looking at it again, or that's why I don't think it was ever brought back up again, because the funding mechanism changed from the time that they denied it in 2009 to when it came back up in 2010. And because in 2010, it was 100% city project. You could use your federal fund exchange dollars, but what that did is it capped you at basically receive, if the project was $2 million, $3 million, you could go ahead and finance the project. You'd get 90% reimbursement of your federal fund exchange dollars, but then it would be towards that project and potentially to tie up those funds 20, 25 years before you ever get any more money from KDOT again from the federal fund exchange program. And now, you know, come fast forward to the day, they have this cost share program that out of the blue, less than a month, very quick process. It was one of those things that had to present the options to the commission just to let you know it's available. wanted to make sure we had good cost estimates, so that way you're just not making a willy-nilly decision, not knowing what the numbers are. At least you have the numbers and you see what the potential major conflicts are. Anyway, it's up to the commission and staff to do whatever the commission decides.
Well, I think if we're gonna take a run at striping it just to see, you know, I've had a lot of citizens come up to me and different locations and say, you know, what are you doing? Don't do this. Don't mess with Summit. And maybe if they have an opportunity to see it, try it, drive it, they may like it, they may not. But we won't be in it at a huge cost. You know, there's a lot of research to do on the packet we got today. I mean, I think we really need to engage the citizens a little more to see what they think.
I personally think the same thing, is that we're asked to make a $3 million Arc City taxpayer expenditure today. I cannot do. I'm looking at 2 candidates and maybe sitting up here in 60 days. I don't have any stake in that game. I don't want to try to tie that commission to a decision that I made on a very short term up here. So I much prefer to use the trial date, the 2 or 3 months, to try it. Let the next commission study it, make a decision, spend the money if that's the will of the commission. There's 2 people on it, well, there's 3 of us, but I'm not running, so I don't have a stake in this. But there's this whole commission can change considerably in the next 30 days, and I don't want to be a part of that. So I'm going to stick by my guns. I think I understand what you're trying to do, and I appreciate it. If you're trying to get that application made and 3 months from now make the decision, but from what I'm hearing, Nick, it might hair lip Arc City to back out on a.
If we got approved, yeah, I just don't think
We
it.
backed out in 2010. We backed out of that project back then.
Yeah, I just don't think it's a good idea to go for
Let me say
the.
something. I think that with the speed as this thing went, you know, gave us 30 days notice. I think there are going to be a lot of towns that's probably not going to. I mean, it's probably not going to do it at that quick pace. I mean, they're probably going to wait, type thing. I still like to see us stripe that thing and give us a couple of months before we say it comes back in March. You know, maybe apply for it in March. But I still like to see how it works out with the public. You know, for a little bit before we go in there and spend, you know, a couple $1 million or whatever it is to, you know, do it.
I'd like to even seen us apply for the 25-75. I know Nick told us if we went 50-50, we'd be much more likely to get it.
Actually, our cost share for the 5-lane was, ended up being like 27-28% would be
For the 5.
for the city, and then on the other ones, 35% would
Okay.
be the city.
But if we applied for the grant on a 25% basis, you're thinking, I believe the other day, or what you told us was, we'd be less likely to get it. But if we save $1.5 million, I don't care if I'm a little bit less likely if I win the lottery.
The thing is, there's certain costs that are not covered regardless. It's only the construction costs that you can do up to 25% of the construction cost, or a minimum of 25% of the construction cost. So anything above.
So it'd only save us $1 million, not $1.5 million.
I think, I can't remember.
It's something like that. I roughly did the figures in my head, so
Yeah.
that's a dangerous place to be.
For a little more clarification,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. You go ahead.
I didn't know, were you done?
I did not say what I said. I apologize.
Were you done?
Yes, I was.
Okay, I thought you were. Nick, on a little bit more information, you said the mill and overlay from Kansas to Radio Lane would be $1 million minimum. What was mill and overlay from?
Well, Kansas Avenue to Skyline was $1 million.
Kansas to Skyline was $1 million. Okay.
And the project was Radio Lane to Skyline was gonna be mill and overlay anyway, right?
Yes, and added sidewalk.
Yeah, okay.
It had sidewalk on the east side of the road.
Okay.
So
Areas that needed it.
we're betting on, if we don't do this, we're looking at $1 million to mill and overlay. And if we're pushing towards 3 lanes and we're going to have to pay $1.4 million for construction costs and the state's going to pay 2.6.
Yeah, but our portion would be 2.6.
It would, but I mean, the other portion is design, engineering, acquisition, adjustments.
100% city cost.
Yes. And the other way is totally 100%, mill and overlay. And it's probably more than that. It depends on equipment, on materials. Okay.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second on the floor that we go ahead and do the cost share funding application for a 3-lane road, is that right?
Yes.
3-lane thing. Okay, it's a voice vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose?
Aye.
Motion declines.
Okay.
So I guess what we're gonna do is try,
So they,
No, we're
gonna try the 3-lane.
no.
Striping.
I asked to get the recommendation from the
Okay.
safety and to come back to us. We don't make that decision until the 11th. If they
Okay.
recommend it, they may change some of that left turn or
Okay.
speed limit. I'm asking them to study it and recommend back to us the 11th, is what
Okay.
that motion was.
So Nick, can we apply for that again in March? Or is it a one-time deal? Okay.
My gut
And
feeling,
I'm 100% for that if things check that way, Duane, but I also am 100% for the new commission making that decision.
well, my gut feeling is that it's happening so fast, I don't know if they're gonna be able to use the whole 50 million right off the bat anyway. That's a pretty fast move.
Oh, that's the government, they can use 50 million tomorrow.
Well, the towns,
is that it?
yeah, I guess, motion for adjourn.
Move.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.